Ladies and gentlemen, my friend Derrick Grayson.
If you would, please give Mr. Hank Sullivan a hand clap of praise. Hopefully you can all hear me well. There is so much that I could talk about, but time will not permit. And I've learned so much from Hank. I need time really to just absorb that. So I'm not going to talk long. I'm going to try and be as brief as possible. The reason I'm here is because we are going to engage in a process called Operation Educate. And the purpose of Educate is to accomplish what Hank was just talking about. We're in the shape that we're in for a number of different reasons, and this very informative video that Hank just told us about, I was taking notes while going through it, because everywhere where he touched on a point, I have a video somewhere on YouTube where I have talked about those things in other areas as it relates to what's going on here in America domestically. And I'm going to give you some examples of some of those things. I'm going to talk a little bit about Ferguson. I'm going to talk a little bit about when I ran. But I want to say this to you, and you really need to hear these words. Our government is dangerous. These people are dangerous. They are folk that have threatened what they represent, and they have literally been killed for it. Can you say John F. Kennedy?
John F. Kennedy.
John F. Kennedy went after the Joint Chiefs of Staffs. Now, you know, I like to stick with low-hanging fruit. I don't try and present folk with stuff that's too far up there for them to get, because I don't want them calling me a conspiracy theorist. I don't want them telling me, you know, I wear a tinfoil hat. So I stay away from, you know, fluoride in the water, you know, chemtrails. I don't need any of that, because I can deal with some of the, I can show you low-hanging fruit stuff, and it's easier for you to reach and grab. Google Northwoods.
Operation Northwoods.
Or Operation, a real live false flag presented by the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Operation 8.
Our government. And John F. Kennedy rejected it and fired the general that was responsible for it. He also went after the CIA and some of the things that they were doing with the Bay of Pigs. This is our government. Now some of you will say, well, no, Derrick, no, come on, man. Our government doing something like that? No, I'm not going to buy that. Those people love us. I got my guy up there representing me. He's got my back. He's fighting for me. You know, I know good and well they won't do any of those types of things. Have you forgotten slavery? I know that's an ugly one. But that was our government. But if you can't handle that, just go back and do Northwoods. See, I know our government is capable of some dastardly stuff. And what Hank just showed us, now it scared the hell out of me. I don't know about you. But I take even more serious what's taking place here in this country. Now, when I decided to run for Senate, he plays you that video. I said it's not enough to wear a pin, wave a sign, and go and vote. That was 2 years ago, over 2 years ago. I said, you know what? Got to practice what you preach. So it wasn't enough to just go and speak and play and wear a sign and go vote. I decided to run. Now I was told, Derrick, you can't win. Go run for one of those lower offices down there. You know, other people deserve. I was actually told this by members of the Republican Party. And Linda Evans, yeah, I named names, went into her office and met with them. What are your intentions? Well, I'm going to run for the Senate. Well, you know, choose something else, you know, because other folk, it ain't your time yet. And we went back and forth, and I said, can I speak freely? Well, sure. What would you have me do? Well, run against Hank Johnson down there in the 4th District. Oh, you mean South DeKalb, down in that district, 4th district I live in, Well, you really don't give a damn about what's going on down there. You don't care nothing about down there. You ain't never had it, and you know you ain't gonna get it, but you want me out of the way. It sounds to me like what you're telling me, hey, we don't want you running against our pick from the royal, the establishment. We want you to go run against the nigga down there in the South. Now, if that offends some of you, I'm sorry, but it is that ugly. And I was offended. And I said, God put me on this path. I will not be moved. Now, if you can't help me, that's fine, but get the hell out of my way. Because I am going to run. Friends told me, you can't run a statewide race. Watch me. I went all the way to May 20th. They did not stop me. And I'm not done yet. Because now I understand how they operate and I know how to beat them. There is a way to win, and we can win, but it's going to require some sacrifice, and I'm going to get to that. So that's what we're dealing with the Republican Party. What did I learn? The royals in both parties are both as corrupt as they can be, and they work together. That was lesson number 1. Lesson number 2, they have a toolbox. And in their toolbox, they have division, they have racism, and they have entitlements. They use entitlements as part of their power base. The Democratic Party boasts a 90% plus support of the American blacks. Without it, they wouldn't have the power that they have. How has that come into being? Largely because of entitlement programs and also other special interests such as gay agenda, same-sex marriage, illegal immigration. So all of those social issues is where most of their power base comes from. Well then, Derrick, what is it with the Republicans? Oh, they've got theirs too. They have their piece of the pie that they work, and they just trade seats. Let me give you one good example, Obamacare. The Republicans in 2006 had the House, the Senate, and the White House. They had 8 years to do something about health care because we knew it was a concern for folk in America because there was talked about under Hillary Clinton, but shot down because Americans didn't want that. But they wanted something done. But here is one fundamental problem that most of us forget. First off, it ain't the federal government's place to fix health care. And the Republicans could have pointed that out, but they didn't. Then we get Obama and we get health care. And all through the debates, my opponents, I'm going to repeal Obamacare and I've got something to replace it with that's going to fix all of our problems. And I would stand up and say, you know, I want to repeal Obamacare as much as anybody else in here. But I don't want the federal government to replace it with anything. Amen. I want them to get out of the way. But some of the people in the audience still could not grasp that. And I still couldn't understand why they couldn't grasp that. Let me talk about one of these other tools, division. We divide by class. Now, class is just as ugly as racism. It is just as ugly as racism. But we make that difference. What did Mr. Perdue say when he was talking about Karen Handel? Look, we got a lot of complicated problems up there in D.C., and all she's got is a high school education. You need somebody that's essentially a lot smarter than that with greater education, and I've got that. That's classism. I don't know nowhere in our Constitution where it said you had to have a Harvard degree or you couldn't have finished high schools. You know, the folk that used to go and represent us were the farmer down the street. They go do what they had to do, take care of their business, and they go back home. But now we have this culture of career politicians. So when he made that statement, that was ugly to me. Win based on your platform, not stepping on somebody because all they have is a high school diploma. That is just as ugly as racism. But there are some people in this room that will still vote for Mr. Perdue because he won the primary. You'll still vote for him in spite of what the man represents. And that's going to get us to this other problem that we're talking about. Now let's talk about racism. This is not my grandfather's America. My grandfather grew up in a time, and his father, where the black man had very few choices. Two of those mainly was submit or die. But that's not the America that my father grew up in or that I grew up in. I grew up in an America full of opportunity, with the ability to overcome any obstacle if I just simply put my mind to it. That's the America that I live in, but people they want you to believe differently, which is why they are utilizing race in this Ferguson situation so that you will not focus on stuff like what Hank was talking about. They don't want you focused on that. They want people thinking that racism is alive and well. Are there racists in America? Of course there are. There will always be fools with us. Yes, they will never go away. But they don't make America. America overcame slavery by getting rid of it. America overcame Jim Crow by killing him. That is not America. This situation with Ferguson, you got a kid who was engaged in a criminal act, who made some bad choices, and he lost his life. It's as simple as that. But here's the ugly side of it that nobody will tell you. A black man's worst enemy in this country is to be murdered by another black man. 91% of the black men killed in this country are killed by another black man. Now that's an ugly truth that nobody wants to talk about. 12 million arrests a year. Out of that, an average of 400 are killed by police officers. And not all of them black, and most of them justified. But 91% of black men killed are killed by another black man. Now that is the truth. Where is the racism in that? With the exception of black on black crime. So don't fall for the nonsense about the race. Stop focusing on that stuff. Now see, that's what black folks' problem is. But I'm going to tell you what most of white folks' problem is. Because see, black folks have been conditioned to think that racism is alive and well. They count on that. That is how they stay in power, liberal Democrats. Well, how does the royals within the Republican Party stay in power? They count on white people to think that you still got it going on. Now, I'm going to say something that's going to be a little ugly, but don't be offended. White people in America are the new niggas. Let me explain to you why I say that. Gun control. Who owns most of the guns legally in this country? Middle class white Americans. That's what gun control is about, taking your guns, knowing who you are, what you own, and where you live. They want to limit your access to weaponry. Crooks don't care about gun control. Who is the greatest percentage of the population in America? White people, 52, 53%. So who is being affected mostly now by unemployment? Because jobs are being offshored. Mostly middle class white Americans. Unemployment always been high in the black community, but now it's starting to get white Americans. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. See, it's starting to come to you now. You need to wake up and smell the coffee. It's getting everybody now. Nobody is excluded from what the government is engaged in. Well then, Derrick, how did we get here? Why are we here? Well, I found out when I ran. When I ran, we had our second debate at KSU. And they did an online poll. Who won the debate?
Derrick Grayson. Derrick
Grayson came in number one. That was the last time they asked that question. Because they don't want you to know that. There's a thing called the circle of loot. Let me explain the circle of loot to you. This will tie directly to what Hank just demonstrated to you, resources and money. Back when Nixon was president and we had Watergate, we had a free press. Most TV. There were 3 big ones, ABC, NBC, CBS, and a lot of locally owned news outlets that did independent reporting. Reporters just wanted to report the truth to the people. What happened? They say, you know, in order for us to be able to control the people, we have to be able to control the message. Again, Hank, Facebook. Government uses Facebook, social media to manipulate. With the circle of loop, they manipulate what you hear in the press. Well, how does this work? Let me explain it to you. You got the 1%ers. They own the corporations. The corporation starts to buy up all of the media outlets. What do they need next? We need people that will do what we want them to do in D.C. Hank just showed you an image of a Politico sitting with some corrupt folk. Well, how do we keep them there? Well, we need to control the message to ensure that they are always elected or re-elected. Well, how do they do that? We will give money to PACs and super PACs. We'll present the illusion that we don't control anything, but we will promote them by giving this money to PACs and super PACs. What do the PACs and super PACs do? The PACs and super PACs will then back the candidates that they know will do their bidding. And guess what? Here's the good part. It doesn't matter if it's a Republican or a Democrat. We will give to both. Whichever one wins, they will engage in policies that will benefit us. Who? The corporations. Now guess what? When they run their newspaper ads, TV ads, radio ads to manipulate the message that you are hearing, that money goes right back to the corporations that own those media outlets that they bought. That is the circle of loot. They never lose anything. They always gain, no matter if it's a Democrat or a Republican. Now, how is that possible that they can continue to win? Because they count on your ignorance. They count on the ability to use race as a divisive tactic amongst blacks. They count on the ability to use class as a divisive tool amongst whites, and they count on your not doing the research for yourself. That is how they remain in power. Now, what is the other part of that problem? I can stand up and tell you, I stood up on stage, all 7 debates, and in the last one, I wanted Hank to play that video, but I didn't get it to him in time. I said, I don't want you to be misled, so I won't pull any punches. I have asked all 6 of my opponents to state and pledge that they will obey 100% of the Constitution 100% of the time. Amen. And if I don't make it out of the primary, whoever that person is, I will give them my support. But this is the 7th and final debate, and no one has bothered to utter those words. Therefore, I will not vote for any of them. I will write myself in if it comes down to it. I will not be complicit in destroying this country by voting for people who don't have the nerve to stand up and say they will obey the Constitution 100% of the time. And that is the problem in this country. We continue to re-elect people that will not support 100% of the Constitution 100% of the time. Why? Fear. First off, we won't get involved. We won't pick up the phone and call somebody and tell them the truth. And the third thing, we caught up in my guy syndrome. Well, my guy is okay. My guy is fighting for me. If your guy were to tell you what Hank just told you about what's going on in D.C., do you think that the other folk that are responsible for it would continue to get re-elected? No, they wouldn't. One thing about Americans, if we know who's doing it to us, we'll take out the trash. But you got to know first. And these guys will not name names. They won't tell you who's doing it. They do everything under the cover of darkness. But there's still a way to win. There's still a way to win. Give you a guy who greatest example of it all, Martin Luther King. The black people told him, sit down, you can't change this. There's no way to beat Jim Crow. He said, oh, no, there's a way to win. But he was smart enough to realize that violence against violence doesn't work. He had to come up with a better way. So what did he do? He told the folk down there with the garbage trucks, stop picking up the garbage. When you don't pick up the garbage, people's trash back up. When people's trash back up, their yards start to stink. When their yards start to stink, they start to call down the city hall. When they start to call down the city hall gets upset and worried because they might start losing money. It brought them to their knees. And they started paying them the same wages that they were paying their white counterparts. Same thing with the bus. So what is it we have to overcome to win in our situation? One, we have to educate folk by telling them the truth about their guy so that we can get them to understand you cannot be stuck on a party, whether it be a Democrat or a Republican. You need to abandon that. Anybody that will not support 100% of the Constitution 100% of the time, do not vote for them, ever. If they have a voting record that is not 100% constitutional. Now I can sit here and ask everybody in here, okay, out of 100% of the Constitution, how much are you willing to give up? Nobody will raise their hand. I said, I tell you what if I give you 90%? Nobody will still raise their hand. Everybody will say, well, I want 100% of the Constitution. Yet you will still vote for David Perdue. Many of the folk voted for Jack Kingston, and I have verifiable documented proof where Jack Kingston voted for legislation that violated your Fourth Amendment protections. I got it on government letterhead, and it cannot be denied, but people still voted for him. Now, I don't know if they voted for him out of ignorance. I don't know if they voted for him because they're caught up in my guy syndrome. Either way, that is what is killing this country. Now, here's the good news. I traveled the state. I probably came in contact with 20,000 people. That's being very generous. It might be closer to 10. But in that coming in contact, every room I went in, when I talked about the Constitution, people could feel me. They knew where I was coming from because they understood what the Constitution is all about. They got it. But the press didn't talk about that. And that's the bigger challenge, which I'll get to. They didn't want the masses to hear about the Constitution. They didn't want them to know that there was a guy talking about obeying 100% of the Constitution 100% of the time. They didn't want them to hear that. Because that goes against the grain of what the royals are doing in D.C. And what Hank was just talking about didn't just start on Obama. That's another thing I get sick of. Now, I despise his policies, but his policies go back to Bush. This may as well be Bush's fourth term. We got one man that would have been president for 16 years and another man that has been pretending to be a black man that has been living large for 8. And that's what it comes down to. So the press didn't want that out there, and that's part of that circle of loot. Now this guy you don't talk to. Whoever he touches, let it be just the people at the debates and at the meetings. And we'll shut him out that way. But 6,300 people that I know I touched, either directly or through somebody else, went and cast a ballot for me. 6,300 because I was able to reach them. Because they understood the Constitution. And if they didn't understand the Constitution, when I revealed to them the truth about what was taking place, they say, you know what, maybe I need to pay attention. Well, the $64,000 question is, how do we turn 6,300 into 250,000, 300 votes the next election that I run in. It's going to take you. We have to overcome their greatest tool, and their greatest tool is the media. He just explained to you how they manipulated, what was the first number, 200,000, 300,000, what was the first number?
The number of people that got
Yeah, I know 800,000 was the second number.
100,000 showed up the first time.
100,000 was the first one, 800,000 was the second one. We have to be able to counter that. And the only way we counter that is by getting up, taking our cross upon our shoulders, and going out and educating others. I have been silent for the last 3 months, resting and recuperating and getting ready for the second battle. And that second battle is Operation Educate, to educate folk so that next time around we can overcome the media. We have all kinds of constitutionally loving individuals that have run for office, that's running for office like Ted Metz, but they have no chance because the political machine, the circle of loot that manipulates, divides, and conquers folks is strong, it's massive. But just like Martin Luther King could beat Jim Crow, just like Abraham Lincoln was able to get the whole of the Republican Party to overcome slavery and grant the Emancipation Proclamation, just like those folk who got upset over that 3% tax down there, up there in Boston, and went and threw it in the water, which led to the revolution, giving us our Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, our Bill of Rights. Just like all of those situations, they found a way to win. But it may literally mean somebody got to die to do it. And that is the problem with the people that you have been electing. They're not willing to die to preserve the liberties and freedoms that many of you have enjoyed in this country. But unless you do your part, unless you start electing people that are willing to die, to preserve, to honor, protect that Constitution, there will be nothing left for your children. And you're going to need some people like me. Because as Hank said earlier, if we don't get somebody in there that's willing to do the right thing, that's willing to die for it, and they continue on with the Federal Reserve, none of this will even matter. Because we will implode. It's just a matter of time. That is how critical this is. But the folk up here at the top, they aren't concerned about what happens with the Federal Reserve because they're covered. It's you and I who are not covered. And that's why I told you, white people are now the new niggas. It's going to get y'all. The experiment worked in the black community. 7 out of 10 babies are born out of wedlock. Most black women don't even bother to get married. High school dropout rate greater than 60% for black males. Black teenagers are more likely to be killed by another black than they are of natural causes. I could go on and on and on with these statistics. But that is all a result of liberal Democrat policies. Now the Republican Party that I once knew, it no longer exists. The Royals have co-opted it. Now, when I say the Republican Party, please note that I'm talking about the Royals. Most Republicans in the Republican Party still believe in those same principles that I believe in, which is why I will not leave the Republican Party. I will stay in the Republican Party. I will die trying to clean it up. And that's where I stand. Thank you.
Questions for Derrick? Wait, hold on.
Yes, sir.
I am not a good speaker like you. But I have
Too
a
kind.
lot. I have a lot of contacts. What can I use in your website to say to my friends and contacts, look at this? Is your website, do you have a website?
Yes, it's Grayson2014.com, which was the campaign website. So if people want to know about where I stand, policies, et cetera, et cetera. But the greatest tool that you can use is to, and Hank, we probably need to grab all of those debate videos. Every debate that was done, I've got it online, where you can hear what they said, and you can hear what I said, and you can judge the responses for yourself. And if you understand the Constitution, everybody in this room will walk away saying, I should have voted for that man. If you understand the Constitution. Because I'm the only one that's about getting back to the Constitution, because I know it is the violation of the Constitution that has put us where we are. Getting back again to Hank and what he was talking about. Everything that they're doing in there is a violation of the Constitution. And if we can't grab that, I will be, you may as well count me as your enemy. If you support somebody who does not support 100% of the Constitution, count me as your enemy. Why? Because I will be fighting tooth and nail against those who do not support 100% of the Constitution 100% of the time. I'm telling you now, I am their enemy. I want a constitutionalist. Now, you ain't got to like me. That's great. You ain't got to like me. But send somebody like me that will support 100% of the Constitution 100% of the time. Because you know what? If you do that, you'll be doing me a favor. Because I will benefit. You can be a racist. That's cool. You like to feed your family just like I like to feed mine. Because see, I don't know of any racists down there in my neighborhood trying to keep me from going to work, breaking in my house. So I'm good with that. I let people do you. But we need constitutionalists running this country in order to preserve it and restore it. Because those folks up there in D.C., they're going to destroy it. And something about those folks that you think are working for you, if they aren't naming names, they're not working for you. Because they aren't willing to lay it on the line to expose the corruption. And that is the key point that we keep missing about the folk that we keep re-elected thinking that they are working for us.
Repeat that website.
Grayson2014.com. Yes, sir.
Are you running for Senate?
I am going to run again. That's why I'm getting started now. Got Neil White back there, my senior advisor.
If I don't win.
Ted Metz. Bruno Rivera over here. So we met a lot of good people during the last campaign, folk that supported, and everybody on our campaign was a volunteer.
They were.
Who loved the Constitution. Not a single paid individual. That is how much those individuals wanted to see change in this country. But sometimes you got to take that first round to learn what it is that you're up against. And see, I know what I'm up against. Now, I know what you're up against. And what all of us are up against is overcoming the machine, the media. Because the media will not put this out. Because they don't want people to wake up. They count on their ignorance. They count on their support based on not knowing. They count on division. Remember, I told you the three tools in their tool chest. Racism, entitlement, and division. That's how they win every time. Yes, sir.
Derrick, one thing you've got to do with this group is to hold the media accountable. That means calling radio stations, like I did Channel 5, let them know we're tired of Ferguson. We're tired of hearing about Missouri and not commenting about the looting, breaking of the law. We're just concentrating on one thing. They're keeping this stirred up. They have an agenda. We haven't talked about a general that was murdered. We haven't talked about a man that's over in Mexican prison that nobody cares about. There's so many things this news media has their agenda, and each person here, me included, are responsible to call these stations and tell them we're tired.
We have a better idea. We already know who owns them. I'll give you the perfect example. And I'm going to tell you why we have a better idea. Not that yours is not a good one, but we tried all of that. Somebody whom everybody loves. He was the 999 man. Herman Cain saw me at the 4th debate. He was there. The following week on his radio station, somebody called in and asked him, well, who's running for Senate in Georgia? He said, well, we've got 5 candidates running. And he named Karen Handel, Jack Kingston, David Perdue, Phil Gingrey, and who's up? Paul Brown. That's all that's running. Yep, that's what we got. Bald-faced lie. But he has his marching orders because that's who he works. Who did I say owns the media outlets now? They follow what they tell them to do. So I made the phone calls. People posted on their Facebook wall, comments got removed. That won't work. That's not going to change. We have to change the narrative. We have to, I just told you. What did Martin Luther King do down there with the garbage men? He told them to stop picking up the trash. What did he do for the bus riders? He told them stop riding the bus. You make them irrelevant. We have to teach people to find other news sources. You won't get what Hank just gave you. I don't care who you call or who you tell. We have to set this up. And that is what Operation Educate will be about. We will find independent journalists. We will find people dedicated to the truth. But we have to be responsible for telling our neighbor and our friend what it is that they must do in order to make this happen. And when you do that, the position that you will put those that have been counting on you to drink their Kool-Aid will be just like when Jesus was talking to the Pharisees and they said, wait a minute, hold up. We paid the tithes. We observed the Sabbath. We did all those things. And Jesus said, yeah, you did. But you ignored the weightier things. Well, what do you mean, Jesus? Whatever happened to love, mercy, and forgiveness? All of those things that you do from the heart. The press used to want you to know the truth because they knew it was the righteous thing to do, which is what the First Amendment was all about. Free speech, the ability to tell the truth without persecution. And now they deliberately tell you a lie to keep you voting for the knuckleheads that we keep sending back and forth to D.C. time and time again. So what do we have to do? We got to make the press irrelevant. We don't want to go to them. We want to make them irrelevant. We got to be our own media. That's our plan, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Have you taken this message to the Republican Party, like the local?
Really?
Every day.
The establishment, I'll put it this way, John Padgett was always nice to me. Every time I saw him and we entered the debate, he would tell me, Derrick, you're saying some of the same things I say. Okay, right on, John.
Are you sure you're talking to the John Padgett that I know?
I'm pretty sure I am.
I don't think I heard the same thing from him.
Well, according to John Padgett, and I name names, he told me that he says the same thing that I say. So if you've been in a meeting with John Padgett, you had to have heard him say some of the same things that I've been talking about. So the Republican Party establishment, ma'am, is not our friend.
Well, I know.
They are our master.
Right.
They would be our master. They want us to support who they want us to support.
On the local level.
But you
I've heard them in a training session 2 years ago in LJ. I heard the Republican Party say to a group of us that they do not want Republicans running against incumbents.
Oh, I know.
Why would we waste our money instead of running against Democrats? They want in, and they say that they are impartial for primaries, but they are not.
I know, but the battleground needs to be fought in the local Republican Party. You need to take this message to them so we can change the party.
Ma'am, I will go and speak anywhere somebody invites me. But the true battleground is with the individual.
Well, you're right.
The
but
true battleground is
we
with the
need to-
individual.
Can I add something to this part of the discussion?
Sure.
Y'all help me out now. Back in Athens, we needed about 400 people to have voted, and Paget would not have been head of the Georgia Republican Party.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many people in here are in the Republican Party and go to mass meetings when they hold them and take a seat from your district so that when the voting comes, you can move up the line so when you get to Athens, you can unseat people like John Paget. If you're not doing that, you are part of the problem.
And there were people who ran who were not establishment candidates in Athens, and they lost because they did not have the support that they needed. There were people who were trying to change the party, and there were some very, very valid candidates who ran.
Catherine Bernard, Alex Johnson.
Back in May 2012, I was one of the few delegates at a time that Matt Brewster, the chairman, they're thinking that, Bruno seems like a nice guy, he's brand new, and maybe we could put him for the state convention. And so I was selected, my mom was selected, even though they thought that she's my wife. And she never attended a GOP meeting in her life. So they were doing the delegate slate like husband and wives format. They weren't adding people like Lori Bone, Mark Bone, or the other guys that they wanted to get involved in the Republican Party in the long term, but they were rejected. So it was it was a very embarrassing moment for the GOP.
We have to go around the system in order to beat the system. Why do you think we had a Tea Party? Because the Republican Party as a whole had lost its way. That's why the Tea Party was formed in the first place. They're part of the Republican Party, but the Republican Party they lost those ideals. And I'm going to say something that might make some people mad. When the Tea Party formed, I was both feet in. And they promised that they would not compromise. That batch that got elected first time around. And they got right up there and they compromised. And they approved that continuing resolution, increasing that debt ceiling. And I was sorely disappointed. Sorely disappointed. Because people will make you a promise now. I know Hank earnestly. Now, you see, the difference between Hank and I, Hank is more optimistic than I am.
They might not have gotten that earlier.
He's more optimistic. I saw him talk with each and every candidate to try and educate them on the Federal Reserve. David Perdue told him if he won a primary, he would come in and meet with them. But he canceled. Now, did he give you an alternative date? Did he offer a new date?
No.
Okay. He doesn't care about the Federal Reserve. If they cared about the Federal Reserve, they'd been doing something about the Federal Reserve already. They don't care about any of that stuff. None of the people that we have been voting for, and I'm guilty because I was part of the problem as well, until I got involved in the process and got to see for myself. And when I found Ron Paul, I was about ready to quit politics. And a friend of mine told me about Ron Paul. And all that I had learned in school, I was fortunate enough where they actually taught me about the Constitution. All of those things came back to me. And I was able to overlay policy and see how it didn't match what the Constitution was all about. But overall, I'm going to tell you, there's some folk that are Ron Paul supporters might get upset with me. But Ron Paul wasn't prepared to go all in. Now, he did a great thing by getting me mobilized. and into it. He did a great thing by reminding me that when you move away from the Constitution, and maybe that's all Ron Paul was supposed to do. All I know is right now it's up to us to make a difference. Because the establishment, that two-party system, is not going to change on its own. 3 people I'm going to quote in the deal. George Washington, his warning. Beware of the party system. That was our first president. Our first president. Ronald Reagan. I'm going to give you Eisenhower. Eisenhower. Beware of the military-industrial complex. What did Hank just tell you? They use the military to enforce their agendas. Eisenhower warned us. And Ronald Reagan. D.C. will not fix itself. These are 3 presidents who, for the most part, did a great job as president. They really had a heart after the people in the Constitution. And there are some others. But there are other presidents that have just not cared about the Constitution. And the last 2 presidents, and I know some of you love George Bush. I was at my district at a meeting, and a guy named Mike, I think he was like the master at arms. I made the statement, George Bush gave us TARP. This guy came, you know, I just really felt bad for you because George Bush did not give us TARP. And I'm sitting here incredulous. What? That was Obama. What? But this guy's master at arms. And was upset because I brought that up, because I said something about George Bush. But these 2 presidents, Bush and Obama, have done something that none of the other presidents have done. Now I'm going to say with the exception of Abraham Lincoln, because he suspended habeas corpus. He did some things that were against the Constitution. Okay? And so I'm not even going to get into debating, you know, ends justify the means or anything, because at this point that's irrelevant. That's antiquity. That was, you know, a different time. But these 2 presidents are the only 2 that have, under the guise of security, secretly violated your constitutional protections.
Amen.
That's right.
Patriot Act.
Yes, Patriot Act,
Yes.
warrantless wiretapping,
Yep.
NDAA indefinite detention. I could go on and on and on. There you go. Yeah, Neil.
Remind them that how you're going to be using to get to everybody's credit, and they can pick up on that by using YouTube.
Why don't you tell them?
Well, you could go to YouTube and survey his name, and you'll get 1,400 videos he's already made, but he'll be concentrating now on the new message, which is what he just heard tonight.
And the website, the centralized website, is going to be Wake Up America.
Nuh-uh.
Y'all changed?
I also have some.
Wake Up Georgia.
Wake Up Georgia, I'm sorry.
Wake Up Georgia.
Wake Up Georgia.
It's Wake Up Georgia info.
WakeUpGeorgia.info.
I also got these stickers where I put down his YouTube page and Grayson2014.com for more information. So, but the YouTube is where all his videos is at.
If anybody's got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them as long as you want to ask them, but I don't want to keep people if you're ready to go. So, are any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Is Wake Up Georgia spelled out, or is it GA?
It's GA or Georgia spelled out?
It's GA, isn't it?
It's Wake Up Georgia spelled out, .info.
Thank you.
.info. .info.
Anybody else?
Next will be Wake Up America.
Amen. Any other questions for Derrick? Let's give him a big hand.